Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this goes, genius or grifter. Today, we're going to try to figure out if Billy McFarland is a visionary gone wrong or just a straight-up con artist.
Well, it's a great question, and you know his story. It really makes you think about ambition and how easily the lines can get blurred between wanting to change the world and maybe, just maybe, lining your own pockets.
Yeah, and we went deep on this one, right? We've got Wikipedia articles, in-depth reports, even court documents.
Oh yeah, we're talking the whole 9 yards. So we're going to unpack all of that today and see if we can get to the bottom of this.
Okay, so before we get to the dumpster fire that was Fyre Festival, let's rewind a bit. McFarland's making some noise with this thing called Magnuses. It was like a luxury credit card and membership club for millennials, all about exclusive experiences.
Ugh, Magnus's, yes. It's interesting because, it's kind of like a blueprint for Fire in a way. Those promises, right? Big, splashy, almost too good to be true. VIP access, luxury perks, the whole shebang. But if you peeled back the layers just a little, the reality wasn't always matching up.
Right, and speaking of not matching up, what's the deal with this $30,000 a month townhouse McFarland was obsessed with?
Oh yeah, I read about that. It's pretty wild. Apparently, he told the real estate agent that he needed the place to get laid more by models. Direct quote.
Wait, seriously, $30,000 a month just for that?
Yep. Now, maybe it's just young guy bravado, who knows? But it makes you wonder about his motivations, right? Like, what was driving him? Was he truly passionate about building a business? Or was it all just a way to feed this, I don't know, this hunger for status and validation? And that theme, that's something we see again and again in his story.
Definitely makes you think. Okay, let's get to the main event, Fyre Festival. The promises, oh man, they were off the charts. Luxury villas on a private island owned by Pablo Escobar, celebrity chefs, the biggest musical acts. It was supposed to be the experience of a lifetime. Totally exclusive.
And that's where the genius, or maybe just the really good marketing, comes in. They were masters of social media, influencers, the whole thing. Creating that feeling of scarcity, like, you got to be in the know to even hear about this, let alone go. And people, they ate it up.
Yeah, they really did. Dropping serious cash for tickets, like tens of thousands, even 100,000 for the VIP packages. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. But as we all know, the reality was a far cry from the hype. Think disaster relief tents, not enough bathrooms, and that infamous picture, you know the one, the cheese sandwich?
Oh yeah, the cheese sandwich is legendary. But it's more than just a funny meme. It really captures how disastrous this whole thing became.
Totally. It was a complete meltdown. You had people stranded, no basic supplies, flights canceled. The organizers basically MIA, just chaos.
Mind-blowing how quickly it all fell apart. Like 1 minute it's this Instagram dream, the next it's a total survival nightmare.
And that's where the legal trouble kicks in. McFarland gets arrested, charged with wire fraud, ends up doing 6 years in prison, and then you've got the lawsuits piling up one after the other. It was a complete mess. Financial and emotional wreckage everywhere.
So how did it go so wrong? Was he just incompetent, way over his head? Or was there something more intentional, like he knew it was a scam from the start?
That's the big question, right? And it's a tough one. It's easy to say he was just a young guy, got caught up in the hype, didn't know what he was doing. But then you look at some of the evidence and it starts to feel a little more deliberate, maybe a little less innocent.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to dive into next. So stick with us as we try to untangle this whole thing and figure out if Billy McFarland was really a visionary or just a really good con man.
It's funny you should mention that because to really get Fyre Festival, you kind of got to understand the Fyre app itself. The festival, it wasn't just about, like, throwing a cool party. It was supposed to be this huge marketing push for this talent booking app McFarland was working on.
So the festival was like a giant real-life ad?
Yeah.
That's a bold move.
Totally. The whole idea was to create this exclusive event, something that would blow up on social media and generate all this crazy buzz for the app. And, in a way, they did succeed, just not how they planned.
Right, because going viral for being a total disaster is not really what you want when you're launching a new product.
Yeah, not ideal. But you have to admit, the initial idea, it had some spark, right? Like getting that island in the Bahamas, the one Pablo Escobar used to own, that was smart. It instantly made the whole thing feel mysterious and kind of glamorous.
Oh, for sure. That Escobar connection, they knew what they were doing with
Yeah.
that. They played it up big time in all their marketing stuff, trying to build this brand that was luxurious but also edgy and kind of dangerous.
Absolutely. And then you add in the influencers. They had models and celebrities pushing this image of luxury and excitement. And let's be real, it worked. People were glued to their screens. They wanted to be a part of it so badly.
Yeah, they were willing to pay for it. Tickets started at $1,500 and went all the way up to over $100,000 for the VIP treatment. Crazy how much money they pulled in based on this fantasy they created.
It's wild, right? It shows you the power of perception, how easily people can get caught up in a carefully constructed image. They sold people on an experience that never existed, and we all know how that turned out.
The whole thing was a facade, a house of cards waiting to fall apart. And it did, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, they had such a short amount of time to set everything up, a few months. For a festival of this size, that seems insane.
Right. It was way too ambitious. They clearly underestimated the logistics of hosting a festival on a remote island. Housing, food, transportation, security, it all went wrong.
And that cheese sandwich photo, that wasn't just a random thing. It was a symbol of how dysfunctional and broken the whole experience was.
For sure. That photo became a meme. It summed up the whole Fyre Festival disaster. But it's important to remember that this wasn't just a few things going wrong. It was a total meltdown.
So for the people who showed up, expecting paradise, what was it actually like?
Imagine this. You land on this island after being bombarded with pictures of luxury and excitement. Instead of private villas, you find tents, like the kind they use for disaster relief. There's no fancy food, just basic stuff if you're lucky. The bands are canceling left and right, and the organizers, nowhere to be found. Just pure chaos and panic.
It sounds more like a dystopian movie than a luxury festival.
Totally. And while everyone's freaking out, you've got McFarland running around like crazy, trying to put out fires as the whole thing implodes around him.
I remember in one of the documentaries, there's a scene where he's desperately trying to get basic supplies, like water, for the attendees. It's almost funny, except it's not.
It's tragic. It's like he was more worried about the bad press than the actual well-being of the people who had trusted him, who had spent their money to be there.
And these people weren't just inconvenienced, they were stranded. Even getting to the island was a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. The planes were delayed, packed full. Some even went to the wrong island. People were stuck on the tarmac for hours, all excited, and then just frustrated and anxious. It was a logistical disaster from start to finish.
So McFarland's facing lawsuits, criminal charges, his reputation's in shambles. It's a lesson in what happens when you overpromise and underdeliver big time.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, was this all just incompetence and bad planning, or was there something more going on?
Was he in over his head, or was this a scam all along?
Well, let's dig into that a little deeper. On the one hand, maybe McFarland was blinded by ambition. He was young, not a lot of experience, and we know he wasn't always truthful with Magnus's. Maybe he actually thought he could pull it off, even though it was clearly too much for him.
So maybe just an overly enthusiastic entrepreneur.
Maybe. But there's another side to this story, evidence suggesting something more calculated. Did you know that McFarland was still asking for investments, even when it was obvious the festival was falling apart?
Wait, seriously? He was taking people's money when he knew the whole thing was going down?
According to the court documents, yeah. And it gets worse. There's evidence that he lied about the festival's finances and logistics to get those investments.
So not just naivety anymore. This is straight up fraud.
That's what the prosecution argued, and the judge agreed. 6 years in prison, that tells you something about the severity of his actions.
That's a long time. And let's not forget the people who got hurt. The investors who lost millions, the attendees who were stranded and traumatized. It wasn't just about money, it was about people's lives being disrupted and damaged.
It's a reminder that these stories, as fascinating as they are, have real consequences.
So leaning more towards grifter than gifted at this point?
Seems like it, right? The pattern of deception, using people for his own gain, it's hard to ignore. And then there's the fact that he's trying to launch Fyre Festival 2.0 after prison. Did he learn anything?
That's what's so bizarre. It's like he doesn't even realize the damage he caused. Or maybe he's just betting on the fact that people love a good train wreck.
I think there's some truth to that. We're drawn to these figures who walk that line between ambition and deception.
It's like we can't look away, even when we know it's probably going to end badly.
You've hit on something there. McFarland's story isn't unique. We see this with grifters and scammers all the time. Multi-level marketing schemes, cryptocurrency scams, you name it.
And social media has made it so easy for them. Creating a fake persona, building a following, taking advantage of people's desire for wealth and success.
Totally. We're constantly bombarded with images of the perfect life, get-rich-quick schemes, promises of luxury. It's no wonder people fall for it.
And McFarland, he understood that. He knew how to tap into that desire for exclusivity and status, how to create something that felt aspirational, even if it was built on lies.
It's a cautionary tale, right? Be careful of anyone who promises you the world, especially if there's a price tag attached.
Yeah, a lesson in critical thinking,
Hmm.
doing your research. Because in a world where image is everything, it's getting harder and harder to separate what's real from what's fake.
And that's the challenge we all face in this digital age.
Yeah.
How do we spot the real visionaries from the con artists?
That is the question. It's kind of crazy, right? We've spent all this time talking about Billy McFarland, how he went from this wannabe entrepreneur to, well, a convicted fraudster. But here's the thing, he's back. Like, actually back in the spotlight.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like he's trying to rise from the ashes of, all those bad decisions. And what he's been doing since he got out of prison, it's kind of baffling. Teasing Fyre Festival 2.0, stepping into the MMA ring, even talking about working on a political campaign.
It's almost like he's trying to hit the reset button. Like, hey, forget about all that fire stuff. I'm a changed man. But can he actually convince people of that? Can Billy McFarland really change his image?
Well, let's start with this whole Fyre Festival 2.0 thing. I mean, the audacity to even try to bring that name back after what happened, it's unbelievable.
I know, right? You'd think he'd want to run as far away from that name as possible. But there he is, doubling down on the whole fire thing.
It's like he's asking for trouble. But then again, maybe that's part of the appeal. McFarland, he knows how to create a spectacle, how to get people talking, even if it's for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, maybe he's hoping lightning will strike twice. I mean, some people, they love that chaos, that drama.
And he's going to get media attention. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. It keeps his name out there.
He's definitely not hiding. He's doing interviews, showing up at events, even saying he's learned from his mistakes. He even said he's writing a Broadway musical about the whole Fyre Festival experience.
Yeah, a Broadway musical. Really? Wow, that's a bold move. Almost feels like he's trying to make a joke out of his conviction. Laugh it off, minimize what happened.
Yeah, it's a way to control the narrative, try to spin his story in a more positive light. But the question is, will people buy it?
Who knows? There's always going to be people who are fascinated by these stories. Deception, excess, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure. And McFarland, he's got that charisma, that cunning. People are drawn to that.
It's like a real-life cautionary tale, What happens when ambition goes too far, how easily people can get conned.
But it's important to remember the victims, the investors who lost everything, the people who went to the festival and were stranded, traumatized. This wasn't just a harmless story. People's lives were affected.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of it all, but we can't forget about the real harm that was done.
And it makes you wonder, why are we so fascinated by these people in the first place? What is it about scammers and grifters that grabs our attention?
Maybe it's because they represent something rebellious, like they're not afraid to break the rules.
Or maybe it's because we see a little bit of ourselves in them, that desire for wealth and success. We see them living these extravagant lives and we think, maybe I could do that too.
I think there's also an element of, schadenfreude. We like to see these people who seem to have it all mess up and fall from grace.
Definitely. It's reassuring to see that even the people at the top, they're not invincible.
But there's also a part of us that wants to believe in redemption. We want to think that people can change, even after they've made terrible choices.
That's a hopeful way to look at it. But does McFarland really want redemption? Or is this just another act in his performance?
I guess only time will tell. If he's serious about changing, he's got to prove it with his actions, not just his words.
Actions speak louder than words, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about this MMA thing. Seems kind of random for a guy like McFarland to jump into the fighting world.
I know, right? It's a long way from luxury festivals and tech startups. But maybe that's the whole point. He's trying to reinvent himself, show everyone he's more than just the Fyre Festival guy.
Yeah, like he's a tough guy now, a fighter, almost like he's trying to literally fight his way back to respectability.
It's an interesting strategy, and, he actually won his first fight. Even Joe Rogan was surprised.
I can only imagine Joe Rogan's face when he saw Billy McFarland walk into the octagon.
It was pretty funny, like a mix of what is happening and I can't believe this is real.
But it shows you McFarland knows how to get attention, keep people talking, even if it means like completely changing his game.
And then there's the political thing. Remember those rumors that Donald Trump's campaign wanted to work with McFarland?
Yeah, that was weird. What could a convicted fraudster possibly offer a political campaign?
That's what everyone was wondering. Some people thought it was just a publicity stunt, a way for both of them to get their names in the headlines.
But others thought maybe McFarland was trying to use his infamy to get into politics.
It's an interesting thought, and it says something about how fame and influence work in politics these days.
Yeah, like controversy doesn't seem to matter as much anymore. It might even be an advantage.
Exactly. In the age of social media, it's all about getting attention, good or bad.
So I guess we've come to the end of our deep dive into the world of Billy McFarland. And I think we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah, is he a visionary or a villain? A talented entrepreneur who made some bad choices, or just a really good con man?
Can he redeem himself? Or is he going to end up making the same mistakes all over again?
Tough questions. I don't think there are easy answers. But the biggest takeaway for me is we got to be critical thinkers, question everything, and be careful of anyone who promises you the moon and the stars.
Because in a world where image is everything, it's harder than ever to know what's real and what's fake.
That's the challenge we all face in this digital age, figuring out who to trust, what to believe.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the wild world of Billy McFarland. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay safe out there.